Welcome to the All-Star Athlete Podcast, your guide to mastering the mental game and reaching your full potential.
Today's sponsor is Well Traveled. Whether you're grinding through long days, pushing your limits in training, or constantly on the move, your body takes a toll. Fatigue, hectic schedules, and changing environments can weaken your immune system. Give it a boost with Well Traveled, a drink mix with clean, clinically proven ingredients for immunity and no added sugar. It's a smarter alternative to Emergen-C. Just open a packet, mix with water, and enjoy. Right now, save 25% when you use the code ALLSTAR on the Well Traveled website. That's gowelltraveled.com/discount/AllStar. Again, save 25% when you use the code ALLSTAR on their website. Stay well on the go with Well Traveled. Today, our guest is Quinn Rawdin. Quinn identifies as an endurance athlete and is from San Diego and has been living in San Diego for his entire life. Quinn, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. First podcast, new experience, and I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well. So if you could just start for our listeners by introducing yourself a little bit more about like your background and your athletic history and kind of where you started and where you are now, just in brief, and we'll go back and talk about some of these things as we go, but just a brief background about who you are and kind of what you're up to.
Yeah, definitely. So my name's Quinn, born and raised in San Diego. I'm 24 years old and I'm the youngest of three. I have two older siblings, older brother Mark, who's 27, and older sister Hannah, who's 30. And I also have a stepsister named Julia, who's my age as well. Everyone lives in San Diego as well. But yeah, growing up, was always active for the most part. My brother and I, we played YMCA basketball throughout our entire childhood, even flag football. And then carried that basketball game into high school, where I played all 4 years, along with beach and court volleyball as well. I went to La Jolla High School, and then after high school, just did not leave, stayed in San Diego, attended San Diego State, where I pursued a finance degree, and did not continue any athletic sports in college. A little bit of a fraternity league, but that lasted about a year or so, and it just wasn't really too competitive then. It's more so just for fun with a group of guys. And then in terms of my athletic journey, everything really started during COVID for the most part. And I know we'll get into that further moving on, but really just in March of 2020, when the pandemic hit, everybody moved back home. It was very isolated. And that's really where I saw an opportunity to take a shot at my athletic journey or fitness journey. And I think naturally growing up, I was always just pulled in the direction of health and fitness. But I think given my environment, especially in college, just a young college student at San Diego State. So my environment then was just having fun, free weekend plans, a lot of partying, a lot of drinking, just a stereotypical college life. And so I think I always naturally had this gravitation of moving or just pursuing some kind of athletic endeavor or fitness journey. But given my surroundings and the people I was with and the activities we chose in our free time, it just wasn't really feasible then. So it was really in March of 2020 when moving back home at my dad's house, I was able to just take a step back, learn whatever it was I wanted to pursue, and that's really where everything started.
Okay, so you've always been active ever since you were a child, probably participated in youth sports. Sounds like it was basketball that you kind of excelled at the most, or maybe enjoyed the most, or participated in the most. And you played in high school. You didn't pursue any sports in college necessarily. Did you have any like D1 offers, or was that like off the table? Or talk to me about like the basketball piece for a few minutes.
Yeah, it definitely crossed my mind at one point of pursuing basketball in college. I remember making my own videos of all my highlight mixtapes and just kind of creating what I could and sending those out as cold emails to mainly D3 colleges. Obviously did not have any luck there, but really in basketball, I was just known for being a shooter. I was lefty, I am lefty, and that was really just my strength of being a three-point shooter, ball handling as well. But I definitely took a shot at that to see if I could make anything out of with my basketball career in college or pursue that in college. But I think that dream only lasted for such a short time. And so I did not really have any focus on pursuing any sports in college. So I think after high school, that was really just the end of that journey.
Okay. So you were athletic. You knew that you were fast, agile, had probably good cardio. I mean, basketball players, really most sort of mainstream sports, if you will, certainly basketball, soccer, lacrosse, football, these sorts of things, like athletes have pretty good cardio capabilities. Certainly nothing up to the level of an endurance athlete, which we'll talk about. I want to kind of ask you to explain what that means shortly. But nothing really ever panned out in terms of a college athletic journey for you.
Right. Yeah, for the most part. And going into college, it really just became a focus of pursuing an academic career in college. Kind of sports just took a backseat in that sense. So yeah, it was really just a traditional college application process, just trying to build a resume, write all the letters to colleges as I could. And I really just at that point shifted my focus from the possibility of pursuing basketball or any kind of sports in college to just focusing on the academic aspect.
Okay, for sure. And you mentioned it was during COVID, so let's talk about kind of the meat of what we're going to talk about today in terms of your athletic pursuits currently, which is to say you identify as an endurance athlete. So can you kind of just explain what that entails exactly?
Yeah, definitely. An endurance athlete to me is really just any kind of fitness discipline that involves long distance running, or even it's really just a blend of anything endurance related. So, the ability to endure something for a long period of time, or just a lot of stress on your body, or whatever that may be. And for me, being an endurance athlete has primarily focused around running for the most part. And so, yeah, with COVID, March of 2020, moved back home, was living on the first floor of my dad's house alone. And I think a lot of people at that time treated that pandemic differently in their own sense. A lot of people were just very comfortable with being isolated or having a lot of free time, because obviously everyone all of a sudden haven't had an abundance of free time. And some people just chose what they wanted to do with that personally, like whatever it was that I know that some friends just sat around, binge watched TV shows, movies, whatever it may have been. While for me, it was almost a blessing in disguise now looking back at it. And, aside from the tragic impact that the pandemic had on the rest of the world, for me, it was just this moment in time of having the space for myself of what is it that I want to do with my life right now. So, all classes moved online. I had an abundance of free time. Everything was shut down on lockdown. And that's when I remember just following all these fitness influencers and classic bodybuilding accounts and professional endurance athletes accounts. And I just remember studying health and fitness like it was a class. I just studied it religiously. I took notes down on how to lose body fat, how to gain lean muscle tissue, how to transform your body, just all these things. And I just took the initiative of this is what I want to do. I've always had this in the back of my head. I've always been naturally gravitated and drawn towards fitness and health in general. And this is my shot. This is my shot at doing it. I don't have the same environment anymore, the same friends. I'm not seeing the same faces. So it was really in that moment when, I took a lot of notes and I just essentially transformed my life at that point in time. My entire morning routine, evening routine changed. I started waking up earlier consistently. My entire diet changed. I started to create I went on App Store, downloaded MyFitnessPal, tracked every calorie. I went onto Amazon, bought an Apple Watch, started using that as a functional metric of how many calories am I burning, tracking my sleep, tracking my workouts. And then, it just started with doing 2 workouts a day for the most part. One always at home at my dad's house. We had a set of dumbbells. I think the heaviest ones went to about 30 pounds or so, but make do with what you have. And then the second workout was always just a run outside. And it was really peaceful in that moment of running. And that's really where I started to love running itself, because it just provided this solitude that I couldn't find anywhere else. And, it was a ghost town out there too. So doing 2 workouts a day, changing my entire diet, my habits in general, creating a sustainable and healthy morning routine, waking up earlier, it really just, over time, seeing that progress, started with a picture with my shirt off in the mirror, and there just honestly wasn't much to show, and I wasn't really happy with how I looked, and I wasn't confident in my own skin, in my own body. And so when I implemented these changes, 2 months goes by and I take another progress picture, and it was like, oh, you can actually see some, like, the top 2 abs right here all of a sudden. And then another 2 months goes by, and now the other 2 were and it became this thing where I realized this works. Like, you can really transform your body if you stick with it and if you endure that process. And I just became addicted to it. I became passionate about it. I really found a newly found sense of confidence in myself. Just looking in the mirror, feeling good with my own body. And not even that, just the mental component of it. It was, I started to, treat people better. I started to respect myself more. I started to show up better for others. And so, again, just that point in time of moving back at my dad's house, looking back at it, really was the catalyst for everything that's happened till now.
That sounds like quite a transformative journey that you're in the middle of right now. I'm wondering, where did this motivation come from?
Yeah, that is a good question. I like I said before, I think it was always in the back of my head, and I always naturally gravitated towards just health and fitness. I would follow these accounts on Instagram, see these people, and you're just seeing a small snippet of their lives, and most of the time it's them in peak condition or whatever it may be. But I think growing up, I was not always confident in myself. I think I lacked a lot of confidence, and I just wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I felt like, especially transitioning from being quite the athlete in high school with basketball and volleyball, and having a pretty crucial role on the basketball team, to transitioning into college, where it really just became a blend of, meet a lot of friends and try to stand out and be with just like which I had a great group of friends in college, no doubt about it. Still keep in touch with them to this day. But I felt like just there was a part of me that was missing. And I don't know if that was a competitive part of me or if that was just not being happy in my own skin. A lot of my habits changed in college. Just eat whatever you want, whatever the friends want, do whatever we want to do. And they just weren't healthy habits by any means. So I think when I had created that space during the pandemic to just focus on myself and really give a shot at what I've been wanting to do for a long time, it felt like, and then seeing progress as I stuck with the plan and just stayed consistent throughout the whole journey, it was almost just like I gained more momentum and confidence throughout the process, where I started to be more passionate about it week after week, month after month. So yeah.
And you're probably as passionate as you've ever been right now.
100%. 100%.
Okay. Can you share for our listeners like what you're working on training for right now?
Yeah, definitely. Right now I'm training for the Boston Marathon, which is taking place April 21st. This will be my second time running it. I ran it last year, and it is a big training block for sure. I'm definitely taking it seriously, and with any race I do, I always strive for a PR in some way, whether that be a time goal, so beating a previous time that I've ran, a distance goal, which we'll get into with ultramarathons. It was always just, what more am I capable of? And I think that's just always in the back of my head. What more am I capable of with every achievement I do? Because I've become a firm believer that no human is limited. I think a lot of the times we impose these self-limitations or self-imposed limitations and barriers in all facets of our life, whether that's physical, mental, with work, with relationships. We always, or it's just such an easy, natural mental pathway to go down that, no, I can't do that, or no, that's just not me, or I know I'll never get there, whatever it may be. And it all just comes down to belief before ability. You have to believe in yourself to really understand that you are capable of doing whatever it is you set your mind to. And so, running the Boston Marathon, training for it right now, it's an awesome experience, and I'm loving every second of the journey. And it's I'm currently running about 60, 70 miles a week, which takes a toll, and it's a time commitment, and you really do have to set time aside in your life and find that time to train for it, to prep for it, because it matters to me. And so I will make sure that no matter how packed or busy my day is or schedule, whatever it may be, I will find the time to keep training, because this is something that's important to me.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, you just ran 18 miles this morning before we shot this show. So
that's true.
It was a commitment, like you said, to training. You got to set aside the time to do it. It's Super Bowl Sunday. You easily could have just phoned it in and taken a rest day, but you're committed to bettering yourself and growing and improving and kind of have an unlimited mindset about what the human body is capable of achieving. So even though we had this podcast set up to record today, you went out and ran this morning before even coming over here.
Definitely. Yep. And I think, did I want to? Did I wake up this morning and feel the energy and the need to run? Absolutely not. Like it was really the last thing I wanted to do today, especially given Sundays are traditionally long run days, or days dedicated to long runs. And so, it's the last thing you want to do. You find all these different things to procrastinate and fill your time with before you should go run. But it's just the commitment to the process that is where I know that I grow and become better. And before the run, last thing I wanted to do, I'm thinking, should I actually do the full run? Should I cut something short? Should I find a shortcut? Ended up doing the full workout, full run, and afterwards you feel that much better about yourself.
Growth occurs kind of outside of your comfort zone. This is a very common principle among sort of growth mindset or just improving yourself. And this is true across all facets of life. It's not just athletics. If you want to get faster at running, you need to push yourself to a pace that's uncomfortable, that might be painful. You might be very sore the next day. That's something that, you're not always going to want to do, because the human brain, as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, and we'll continue to talk about this, tends to be the limiting factor. Our bodies are capable of doing incredible things, and it's oftentimes the brain that first says, no, we really probably shouldn't do that, or this is going to be uncomfortable. And that oftentimes deters many people from pursuing things that are really, when it gets down to it, like uncomfortable. But that's how you get better. That's how you get faster. That's how you run a longer race. If we're just strictly talking about athletics here.
Right. Definitely. Yeah, I think it's important to understand the difference between mind and body. They're completely separate from one another. And I think a lot of people get it mixed up that it's all blended and it's all one together. or all just one as is. And I've come to really understand that it's essentially emotion versus action. Your emotions will get up early. If you need to get up early in the morning, it's cold outside, it's dark outside, the bed is warm, it's nice, an extra hour of sleep sounds really good in the moment, and getting up is the last thing you want to do. And that is emotion telling you, stay in bed for a little longer. There's no need to go out. Why put yourself in an uncomfortable situation like that? Where the body kicks in is, you need to do what you need to do. And oftentimes it's not comfortable. And oftentimes you experience discomfort. But really the equation, the way I see it, is discomfort equals growth. And that is the only way to keep moving forward and just achieve whatever it is you need to do, because you really need to fight that battle of emotion versus action. And I think on a repetitive basis, if you continue to choose the hard right over the easy wrong, you continue to not let emotion take over and distract whatever the focus is in the moment, you just become accustomed to that. And it really gets to a point where you don't think twice about it.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that you bring up that point, because I just went for a run myself this morning, and I ran a 5K, and I was thinking to myself as I was running often clears my head, as it probably does for you as well. I was thinking to myself, because I'm very much in the camp of growth mindset and do things that are hard or challenging or uncomfortable because you will experience growth, which is funny because a lot of people shy away from those things because they don't like the feeling of being uncomfortable. And so those are often the people that sort of remain stagnant or don't grow. I was running this morning and I was thinking to myself, like, the things that are the hardest to do in life are the things that are the most worth doing. And the things that are the easiest to do in life are the least worth doing. Like, you're going to feel less accomplished and you're going to get less out of it, whether it's financially, whether it's emotional takeaway, whether it's succeeding at the highest level of anything. And there's obviously a limit to that, because like, I'm not going to tell you to just go out and run like 500 miles right now. There is a limit to like performing outside of your comfort zone. You need to be in a band of difficult but still achievable. Otherwise, it is really a deterring factor from actually accomplishing anything. And it can be difficult to kind of find that band where you need to operate in. But to your point, I was just thinking that same exact thought to myself this morning. Like, the more challenging something is, the more worthwhile it is to do it.
Absolutely. Always. Yeah. And I've really come to understand the importance of that as well, just throughout my athletic journey. Because just like everyone else, you face that, the thoughts in your head of, this is too hard, or I don't want to do it, or I don't want to feel this discomfort right now because I know this is going to be uncomfortable. And it is always just the fight of emotion versus action. Because if you let your mind take over and one day, and then you let it take over the next day and the next day, it becomes a habit to the point where you are always letting emotion dictate whatever it is that you do and drive your actions and drive your life. But if you take a step back and understand the separation of, my mind is telling me one thing, but I know I need to do this other thing. And most of the times that other thing is, comfort versus discomfort. If you just continue to choose the discomfort, which again is growth, over time on a repeated basis, it just becomes habit that way. So you can really just choose the hard right over the easy wrong day in, day out with any choice. And it to big decisions and small decisions, it really just plays out every day in your life, and it's just, which one are you going to choose?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And another thought that is popping up in my head right now as you say that is, because I've been doing the same thing for many years as well, with choosing the path of more resistance, because I understand that I'm going to get more out of it. I've actually sort of trained my brain through trial and error, and this takes a long time. It's not something that you're just going to wake up tomorrow and be able to do. But I have trained my mind through repetition and through trial and error to understand that when an opportunity arises, no matter what it is, whether it's a social opportunity, whether it's a financial opportunity, whether it's an athletic opportunity, when an opportunity arises for something that kind of you feel that rise of uncomfortableness, that anxiety, that stress, that apprehension, like, oh, I don't know, like this is going to be difficult. This is going to be uncomfortable. I might get embarrassed. I might, whatever, like I might have a panic attack, these sorts of things. I've trained my mind to understand and to realize that those opportunities, when they arise, are opportunities that I must pursue. And that is a very divergent road because most people choose the path of avoidance because those sorts of opportunities are so uncomfortable and anxiety inducing and stressful that most people are like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm going to stay away from that. I actually firmly believe, and this is how I act now when I come across one of these opportunities, that I must pursue those difficult opportunities because the feeling of regret that I am left with when I pass up on a difficult opportunity where I know that I could have experienced so much growth, the feeling of regret is so awful. It's worse than any feeling that I know I will encounter pursuing whatever that difficult thing is. Do you ever have that kind of experience as well?
Yeah, all the time. Absolutely. I have a major fear of regret in general. I mean, at the end of my life, laying on my deathbed, I would absolutely hate to say there was so much more I could have done, or there was a specific decision or specific situation that I knew I should have taken the hard route or the route that involved discomfort. And I just have that repeating in the back of my head with anything. It applies to fitness, it applies to work, it applies to relationships. It is just the thought of regret and knowing that you should have taken the route of resistance, of most resistance compared to least resistance, definitely just is on repeat in the back of my head, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think any good story really starts with, so I just decided to stay home this weekend. Most good stories are like, so I pursued this crazy thing, this athletic event, or this girl at the bar, or this new skill, or skydiving, or whatever. Like that's, I don't know, I don't want to use the word like crazy, but it's like uncomfortable. It's like out of the box. Like that's where most good quote unquote stories come from, whether it's a story that I'm telling you or a story that you're telling somebody on your deathbed. Like I also don't want to have any regrets when I get old. So those opportunities that I was mentioning, those opportunities that present themselves and they're uncomfortable, first of all, those don't happen all the time. There are a finite number of times that we will encounter an opportunity in our life that strikes that sort of anxiety and fear and stress in us. And so because there are a finite number of those opportunities, that is why I feel like you must seize them. So for you, that would be like participating in the next big race or the next longest race or something like that, where it's like, that this is going to be uncomfortable to train for or mentally to endure, or, it's a new skill, or you're going to need to train your body in a different way, which we'll get to in just a second, talking about like Hyroxes and Spartan races and these sorts of things. But real quick, I want to kind of move on here. Before we move on, where can people follow your journey? Because it's for sure an inspirational one. Do you have social media? If people want to follow you, connect with you, or learn more about your sort of athletic background and journey, where can people follow you?
Yeah, definitely. For the most part, currently, just Instagram. It's at Quinn Rawdin, which I'm sure we could posting the show.
I'll put it in the show notes for sure.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah, but I definitely have intentions, especially this year, of growing my social media presence. Just whatever that may be, documenting my journey, documenting a marathon build, an ultramarathon build, any kind of advice or tips I could give while training, nutrition, recovery process, any of that, mental, mindset tips or whatever it may be. So I definitely have intentions of publishing and putting more content out there. But as of right now, it is pretty much just Instagram for the most part. It's probably where most people could connect with me, DM me, and just follow along with my journey.
Okay, perfect. Well, this is a great first step because this is, as you mentioned earlier, the first podcast that you've done, really probably the first time that you've kind of publicly talked about your journey with being an endurance athlete. So definitely this is a good first step for people to learn about you and kind of what you're up to. So maybe use this as a springboard. We're going to be talking about some mental performance techniques today that you use or wish you use or these sorts of things. So because no doubt if you're trying to run a marathon or a longer race, there are lots of things going on up in the head, whether they're mental performance techniques or running is a very sort of isolating sport in the way that like swimming is, for example. So there's a lot of things that hours really when you're going for a long race, thoughts that are going on up there. So we'll talk about that. But as far as like the marathons, right? Because you do marathons, you do ultra marathons as well. So you've run some even longer races than marathons, which some people might be like, oh my God, like there's longer races. You talked about this a little bit. It was during COVID. You wanted to see what you were capable of doing. Like what sort of inspired you to pursue marathons or even ultra marathons?
Yeah, it was fairly a linear progression of even getting there. So it was never initially I had my eyes set on doing marathons or at the time I didn't know ultramarathons were a thing. That was newly discovered along the journey. But it was always just a curiosity of what more am I capable of with every accomplishment or race or goal that I achieved in that moment. So it was gradual. It was linear. It was never, the start during the pandemic was really just a transformation, a physique transformation, I would say. It was, that transformation it got to a point where it was definitely unsustainable, I will say. I was waking up in the morning where I would be lightheaded just because I was single digit body fat and I took it definitely too far. Yeah, it was a lesson learned for sure. But it was just cool to see a transformation in my physique. It was cool to see that, if you stick to something and stay consistent with it, you can actually see progress. And that was just a physique transformation. Getting into the running space, it started with 2 to 3 miles a day, which at the time felt equivalent to 100 miles. I also didn't know a single thing about running when I was first starting out. So I remember going for 2 to 3 mile runs and going as hard as possible. Like I thought that the harder you run and the harder effort you put, the better you'll get. And after 2 miles, after 3 miles, I would come back home absolutely wrecked, very sore. Sometimes just couldn't run the next day because that was the whole mindset. Like the harder I go, the better I'll get. So it transitioned into, just every little win that I started stacking up. Just what more am I capable of? What more am I capable of? And it was just this curiosity again of, I don't think we're limited to anything physically, mentally. I think it is all just a matter of belief comes before ability. And once I started to gain that belief in myself and gain that confidence in myself, it was just, what's the next step? How can I keep going? So, yeah.
So the inspiration was not necessarily like, I want to run an ultra marathon. The inspiration was rooted in self-improvement.
Exactly.
Which first started with the physique transformation. So eating healthier and exercising a couple of times per day. And it sounded like you weren't really super happy with your physique. Were you suffering from any kind of like depression at the time? Or was there some, because I don't want to say that there had to be a catalyst, but usually for that sort of a mindset shift, like there's something going on. Was it a breakup? Like, did something happen in your life that you were like, I want to just like work on myself?
Yeah, I think no real signs of depression or any kind of breakup or anything. It really was just I wasn't happy in my own skin. I wasn't. When I took my shirt off or if I looked at myself, I just wasn't content with what I had. And I knew I just had this burning desire to be better than what I was currently. And with getting into running, it again was just a fascination of I was just a book. I was just consuming knowledge like no other. How do you structure your runs? What is an easy pace versus a hard pace? When you work out, what kind of split should I do? Is it a push-pull legs? Is it full body every day? What's best? And I'll admit at the beginning I was definitely a perfectionist with everything. You know, I hesitated on a lot of it because I needed the perfect diet or the perfect running shoes or the perfect anything until I realized the single most important factor is just starting. Like, just start and see where you can go from there. So back to your question, it wasn't necessarily any kind of immediate event or life-changing tragic event that happened in my life where I just took a step back and started going from there. It was, I think I just always was naturally gravitated towards pushing myself. And again, it was just given my environment in college and what I was doing in my free time and the activities and the habits that I had at that moment in time, I wasn't happy with deep down. And I think in the back of my head, as much of a good time I was having with friends and everything, it just wasn't who I was. And I knew that there was more inside of me. So I think it was, it was just a natural thing in me that really wanted to take this off and see where it could go.
Okay. You've always had a mindset for improvement, and you started making some choices. Your lifestyle was not really what you wanted it to be in college, basically. And then, as you mentioned earlier, which obviously the pandemic was terrible for a lot of different reasons, but there are silver linings to everything in life, really. And I kind of like to say that nothing that happens really in life is good or bad necessarily. Things just happen, which is kind of a stoicism way of looking at things. But it's all up to interpretation. Like, COVID happened and you could have been like, oh, woe is me, like my college lifestyle or whatever, I can't get out anymore, this or that. But you chose to take that event, as awful as it was for a lot of people. There was a lot of death and suffering and these sorts of things, but you chose to kind of be a driving force for you. Like, oh, I have all this time now and I can, look online and find all these resources and do a bunch of reading. And you use that as a platform to improve yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it was also just very, I don't know if I'd say addicting, but it was cool to see just how it impacted my mental health as well. I realized I just started smiling a lot more. I just would have these bursts of positive emotions a lot more. Any kind of conversations I had with anyone, I just felt this newly found sense of confidence within myself. And I think I just lacked that throughout the rest earlier in my life. Like, I just never felt confident or felt truly just, happy with myself. And if you're not happy with yourself, if you don't love yourself, how can you inflict that on anybody else? Because it just wouldn't be truthful in that sense. So yeah, it was the progression of seeing my own life turning around for the better to where I realized, I feel good now with myself and I can put that good towards others and my relationships, my health, my fitness, my career, work, school, whatever it may be.
That's fascinating. I really love digging into the mindset of people who are addicted to growth. I know you didn't use that word, but I feel that at some times as well, with that sort of growth mindset and wanting to see what, the best version of myself can be and can look like.
Right.
So let's talk about mental performance skills now. So we know that you're an endurance athlete. marathons, ultramarathons, you do weightlifting, which is part of your training. You just did a Hyrox recently. I think you're kind of wanting to train for more of those. As you are already aware, but our listeners might not be, long distance running, or sort of being an endurance athlete in general, requires immense mental and physical strength, but mental strength particularly. What mental techniques do you rely on to push through races or those difficult days or the toughest parts of any race? Do you have any go-to mental techniques that you use to get through these absolutely brutal, sometimes brutal physical endeavors?
Yeah, definitely. Number one is finding your why. And I think if you and it's individual for everybody, it's very unique, but if you find your why of, why is it that you're signing up for this race in the first place? Why is it that you're pursuing this goal in the first place? Whatever it may be that you're trying to achieve, know what your why is. And that can really serve as a very strong anchor throughout the entire training process. Because again, there are going to be the days where training or going for that run or going to the gym is the last thing you want to do. But if you remind yourself of, I remember what my why is, and it can really just offset any kind of negative thought patterns or doubt that may start creeping in. So that's number one, I would say. And again, individual for everybody, for sure. Two is, pain really only exists if you give it a voice. And I think if you are in mid-race, I'm mid-race in a marathon, and I start to experience some kind of pain, whether that be mental, physical, if I acknowledge that and then let that flood throughout my entire body, I will feel that pain in that moment, and that will just completely transform how I feel, my outlook, my perspective on the race or in life in general. But again, it kind of goes back to, emotion versus action. Pain is just an emotion, and if you give pain any kind of thought or just attention, it will take over naturally. So instead of working against pain, I've learned over time just to work with it and use it as a teacher. Use it as, this is an opportunity right now to learn more about myself. How am I going to push through this rather than try to fight it, work against it? And then the third would be control the controllables and understand the importance of you have control with whatever is in your control. And any kind of external factor that is outside your control, it's not worth worrying about. It's not worth getting stressed about. It's not worth feeling a flood of anxiety over, because it is outside of your control. A lot of times, especially on race day, you hope for the perfect weather, a little bit of clouds, no wind, just a nice cool temperature, because especially when you overheat pretty fast while running. At least I do. My body temperature runs high. So you always just hope for perfect race day weather. But let's just say it's 80 degrees and blazing sun out, or it's 20 mile per hour winds and it's pouring rain. Are you going to let that overtake your entire mentality of all the prep and the training and the preparation you've done to get to this point of the race about to start? Or again, it's outside of your control. You have no control about the weather, about anything that is an external factor. So just focus on whatever it is you can control. And yeah, that really is I think it just eliminates a lot of stress and unnecessary anxiety in a lot of people when you focus on the factors in your life that are controllables, and then exclude and don't give attention to the factors that you cannot control.
You have some pretty good tools in your tool belt, I would say. So just to recap, the 3 top mental performance strategies that you use right now, and I'm sure there are more, are find your why. So in other words, that can go a couple of different ways, and it probably does for you, but why did I first start doing this in the first place is a big why that comes into my mind when I'm thinking about find your why. And then not only why did I start doing this in the first place, but why am I doing this now? Because you have to answer that question not literally, but when you're waking up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. For a race or for a training, and it's cold outside or it's hot outside and it's windy, and it's like, why am I even doing this? Like, this is all obviously individually answered, but for some people it might be because they're running because their mom passed away from breast cancer, or they just went through a breakup recently, they were abused as a child, or they've got like eating disorders and they exercise because of that. For you, I don't want to put words into your mouth. It might be because I want to see what the best version of myself I possibly can be. So find your why as number one. Number two is don't feed the pain, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that concept is basically rooted in the idea of anything that you give your energy and your emotion to will feed on it, so to speak. So if you're in the middle of a long, grueling race, it's hot, it's full marathon, whatever, you're trying to push that pace, and you start to feel some of that pain creeping up, essentially ignore it, right? Like, it's there, it exists, but the more you think about it and feed into it, the more it's going to ultimately affect your mentality, your outlook. You might start thinking, oh my God, there's no way I can keep up this pace, or, oh my God, I have 10 more miles, this is going to be awful, these sorts of things. So that's a great technique. And then the last one, which is one of my favorites, so I'm glad that you said that, is control the controllables. So you can control your attitude, you can control your nutrition, your sleep, your hydration, you can control your preparation, you can control your mindset, but you can't control what day the race is happening. You can't control the race conditions. You can't control your competitors. You can't control many different things. And so this kind of ties into the same idea of number two, with like feeding energy into things that you want to feed energy into, because you will run your best race and perform the best if you control what you can control and put your energy into those things. If you put your energy into things that you can't control, it's going to have abstract negative outcomes on your performance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, not just to a race, control the controllables applies to everything in life. And I think it just saves people such a headache and such a just flood of anxiety if you just understand that there's only a handful of things you can control in your life. And most of the times, like you said, that's your attitude, that's your preparation, that's any kind of physical or mental action that you take for yourself that you can control. And even during a race, it is, again, you can start to think about all these negative thought patterns and feelings of doubt or the feeling of pain. Or it could be a normal Tuesday and you're having a bad day and you had a tough interaction with your boss or whatever it may be. You can change your attitude or the way you show up or whatever it may be at any point throughout the day. It doesn't have to ruin the entire day. It doesn't have to make you get thrown in a setback or feel frustrated or anger at any point, because you have control of your emotions. You have control of your mindset. You have control of the next action or the next step you take in that moment of time. And that's powerful. That definitely goes a long way. Absolutely.
So you also are a weightlifter. You probably don't sort of identify as a bodybuilder or a weightlifter. Maybe you did a little bit more when you were kind of doing the physique stuff. Do you use any mental performance strategies like visualization, mindfulness, imagery, any kind of techniques for your sort of general fitness and weightlifting as opposed to the endurance pursuits? Do you use any different techniques for your weightlifting, or is it kind of the same stuff?
I'd say mostly the same. I think, again, it comes back to belief before ability, whatever that may be. If you're trying to hit a PR in the gym or, progressive overload, you really just need to believe in yourself that you can even do that and get stronger before even going up to the, whatever it may be, a deadlift, and just visualize yourself actually doing it or visualize yourself making the progress. Mindfulness, not necessarily related to weightlifting, but just mindfulness in general, I've definitely incorporated in my life over the last few years, I would say. Everything from journaling to meditation to, I even have a whiteboard now on my fridge, and I just put up the quote of the week or whatever it may be, just something that I can look at on a repeated basis and just really hone in or set the tone for the day for myself. And journaling goes a really long way, just getting thoughts on paper, whether that's before bed, first thing when you wake up in the morning. But that also just creates a positive tone for the day, sets your intentions for whatever it is you want to do. List out some things you're grateful for, list out what are the top 3 priorities to get done today. But with weightlifting, I'm just as obsessed with weightlifting as I am with running because, number one, I think it just keeps me sane, especially during a marathon build when you're running 6 times, 7 times per week, and it can just become very repetitive, very monotonous. And, just incorporating a balance of a different fitness discipline like weightlifting can just it's something to look forward to. If I ran 6 days a week and that's it would be I would reach burnout at some point. But having weightlifting as a different fitness discipline to look forward to and see progress there as well keeps me in the game. So
weightlifting is sort of a form of a mental performance technique in and of itself because it's helping prevent you from burning out on running. So even though weightlifting is a very physical pursuit, generally speaking, you're using it as a tool, another tool in your tool belt to help. I mean, there's obviously cross-training benefits from weight training to endurance athlete pursuits, but you're using weight training in part, not in full, but in part as a mental performance tool, which is sort of fascinating because I've never really thought about it like that before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even just aside from the mental aspect of it, from a physical standpoint, with running, especially whether it's a marathon or ultramarathon to be specific, whether, because ultramarathons typically, for the most part, are on trails, and so it is a technical course, technical terrain, and you need to build a body that can endure that moment. And so I'm a firm believer in whatever endurance discipline you are involved in or committed to, that weight training has to be a key pillar to that training as well, because especially in an ultramarathon, if you don't have a strong body, it's only going to take you so far where your mind has to kick in and carry you for the rest. And so just to develop a strong body and a body that can endure these ultramarathons or these marathons in themselves it's crucial. It definitely is.
You have to cross-train in order to be able to do endurance pursuits.
Without a doubt.
Otherwise, your body's going to break down.
Exactly.
Basically. Talk to me a little bit about Hyroxes, because I just found out about them personally, and recently I'm a personal trainer. I'm big in the fitness world. I've heard about, Tough Mudders and Spartan races were the big thing for a long time. I just heard about Hyroxes recently, and a lot of people are kind of jumping on that bandwagon, no pun intended. You participated in one recently. I don't know a ton about them personally. So, and I'm guessing our listeners may or may not have heard of them before. So talk to me a little bit about, first of all, what is a Hyrox exactly? And second of all, why did you choose to pursue that? What are they all about exactly?
Yeah. First off, it is one of the fastest growing sports that I've seen. Definitely. It's, I think it started in the UK and then it kind of started to make its way towards the US, but you can go on Hyrox, their website, and they have races in Spain, in Mexico, Canada, Europe, just all throughout the world. So it's definitely a fast-growing sport, and tickets nowadays just sell out like that. It is crazy. So, which is unfortunate, and I don't know if because there's no way to know when they release the next Hyrox race, so it just has everybody on their toes waiting for the next Hyrox location to be released, and then tickets just sell out like that.
Tickets to participate or tickets to observe?
Participate for the most part. Yeah,
Okay.
They do have spectator tickets, and I would say those don't sell out for the most part unless it's like at a major event or just major location that's very popular. But yeah, tickets just to participate sell out very fast.
And how much does it cost to participate in the Hyrox?
I think it's about anywhere from 140 to 160 per person.
Okay, and what is a Hyrox exactly? What does this entail? And because it falls in it's like a cross between, it's like weightlifting and endurance pursuit, right?
Definitely. I think it was piggybacked off of CrossFit initially. So I think, and I don't necessarily know the origin of how it started or who created it, but essentially what Hyrox entails is it is 8 kilometers of running total. And so which equates to just about 4 miles total throughout the race. And you have to run 1 kilometer, and in between each kilometer, or no, I'm sorry, 1,000 meters, or 1 kilometer. And in between each kilometer, you do a specific workout station. And so these workout stations, some of them consist of the ski erg. Some of them consist of row erg, sandbag lunges, sled push, sled pull.
Are they always the same obstacles, or it is different based on the event?
Same obstacles. Always the same obstacles.
So it's very standard.
Very standard.
A lot of people might be familiar with Spartan races, for example, or Tough Mudders, and maybe have you ever done a Spartan race?
I have not.
Okay. I could be wrong about this. I think there are some standard obstacles or feats of strength that you need to complete in a Spartan race, but I think there is also some variability. And there's also variability, I know this for a fact, there are different lengths of Spartans. There's like a sprint, a super, and a beast. So there is some running in between those as well. So it sounds like a Hyrox is very specific. It's 8,000
meters.
8,000 meters, 8 kilometers. You run for a kilometer, and do you start running?
You start running.
So you start running, and then you arrive at your first
station,
challenge or station, and it's just speed-based. Like, how fast can I row X number of meters? And then as soon as I'm done that, I'm on to the next kilometer, and then so forth.
For the most part. I mean, the elites who are doing Hyrox, the whole goal behind it is to win the Hyrox, or just in general to place. It is maximal power output from start to finish. So you really are going at a fast pace in the run, in the workout stations themselves. Now, obviously, there's strategies to pace yourself so you don't just burn out too fast. But yeah, you start with a 1 kilometer run, go to the first workout station, 2nd kilometer run, go to the second workout station, and you repeat that 8 times.
So it's more of a power sport than it is an endurance sport?
No, I would say it's an endurance sport, but it is, for example, like a sled push. You do need to have some power output in order to push a sled. And same with the sled pull. And so the functional movements, I would say, require power output. But at the same time, you also need to be fast on your feet for the run. Because, given that Hyrox is, I think it's just about 50% running. So half of it is all running. And so that also is what really separates just the amateurs from the elites, is being able to run at a 5:30 minute per mile pace, or whatever it may be, in that 1 kilometer, but then also have the strength and the endurance capability to push this sled as fast as you can, and then also try to conserve energy at the same time.
Sure, because I could be an absolute beast in the gym, and I could be a sled push king, or ski erg king, or sandbag lunge king, and I might be able to complete that station 30 seconds faster than you because I'm just a stud in the gym. But if you can run a minute faster than me over the course of a kilometer, then you're going to come out way ahead. So it sounds like it's a pretty good blend of like running endurance and pacing yourself, and then also having the power and the explosivity to be able to complete these stations as fast as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've just doing one this last weekend. I did Hyrox doubles, so I had a partner while doing it, and so they have different divisions, different categories. They have just men's division where you're just on your own, solo, singles division, doubles, or you can do mixed doubles with a boy and a girl. They even have relay, so that's a team of 4. And again, the distance is the same for everything. So for when I did doubles, we both had to run the kilometer at the same time. But when it comes to a workout station, you can divide it up however you want. It's really a you go, I go approach. So you can break that up into, on the ski erg, I'm going to do 250 meters. You're going to do 250, 250, 250, 500, 500, whatever you feel is best and most comfortable. But yeah, after doing it, I immediately thought to myself, like, I see a future in this. I definitely would. It's the perfect combination of my running capabilities, but also just the strength training that I devote every day on top of that. So it really is just this perfect blend of both running itself and then also having power output and power capabilities for the workout stations.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have to look into that myself.
Yeah, we'll do doubles.
Yeah, for sure. I do a little bit of running, not as much. I was training actually for a half marathon last year. I've never done any more than a 5K actually. But I started to get like some ankle tendonitis. Mm-hmm. So I'm a personal trainer. I had to cut back on the running because I just really couldn't afford financially or physically to be like limping around, So, but I've started running again a little bit more. I enjoy, weight training and these sorts of things. So I don't know if I've ever officially considered myself an athlete. If I did, it would probably be more of like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Although I've never competed and never have intention of competing in bodybuilding, but that's more of the style that I train in, so to speak. But I do like the idea of sort of the hybrid athlete. I fully believe in, having good cardiovascular capabilities and good strength and power, as well as flexibility and mobility, which are sort of the big 3, if you will, if you have a trifecta of being in the best shape possible. So it sounds like definitely a Hyrox kind of keys in on that, hybrid athlete pursuit.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, even just the environment at the Hyrox itself, I think, most of them take place indoors. So usually at convention centers. I mean, if there was one in San Diego, I have no doubt it'd be at the San Diego Convention Center. But just the energy in the event like that is unmatched. The spectators can get right up to you. They can watch you, follow you easily. It's not like a marathon where, the person you're trying to watch just runs by you for 5 seconds and that's it. That's the last time you see them. Or if you see them again, it's another 10 miles out again. So the energy is great in there. And yeah, I definitely see myself doing more. It was a great experience, and it's still up and coming. Like I said, it's a fast growing sport. So I know that there's a lot of probably strategies to tackle it or different techniques to tackle it. My experience was really just getting the feet wet, just understanding what is this in general, how does this work. But yeah, I'm excited for the future with that.
That sounds really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on here and kind of keep talking about mental performance. Okay. So you're an endurance athlete. What are some of the most challenging mental moments that you've faced so far in your, I'm going to call it a young career as an endurance athlete, because you said you're kind of in your early 20s. So reasonably, you're going to be doing this for a while longer. So in your career, what are some of the most challenging mental moments or obstacles that you've had, that you faced, and how did you push through them?
Yeah, I think those are where those come out is mid-race, during a race itself. I know we'll get into the athletic endeavors and the journey pretty soon, but I participated in the San Diego 100-mile Ultramarathon, and you could imagine in that time span, there was a lot of mental.
So just repeat that real quick. So in case people missed this, you participated in a 100-mile race.
Ultramarathon,
An
yes.
ultramarathon.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that we didn't skip over that.
Yeah.
So that's like 4 times the length of a regular marathon.
Essentially.
Okay, yeah. So continue.
Yeah. And you could imagine the mental hurdles you experience just from start to finish in a race like that.
And sorry to interrupt you again. This is uninterrupted, in other words, contiguous 100-mile race where I think you explained this to me off the air. You're not sleeping, you're starting, and then you're running. You're probably taking some rest breaks to like eat and take a minute. But it's 100 miles basically in a row without sleeping, no resting, probably overnight. It took you how long to do this?
27 hours and 28 minutes.
Okay, so that's basically essentially consecutive hours of running. So longer than a day.
Yeah.
Okay, so continue.
Yeah. And so there was many moments throughout that race where I probably took 100 steps back just to give myself space and think, what is it that is wrong right now and how can I move past this? I vividly remember early on in the race, probably, I don't know the exact mile, but between 20 and 30 miles, so fairly at the beginning, I experienced this awful stomach bug or just stomach pain, and it was a very sharp pain, and it felt like just like your stomach's in a washing machine. All your intestines are just jacked up and brutal, and it forced me to walk. I couldn't run. And in an ultramarathon, typically there are what are called aid stations along the course. It varies how many there are in each race and varies on the distance, but at these aid stations, they're checkpoints essentially. So they will have these pop-up tents with tables, and you can select any food if you want, or fuel that you need, or liquids that they provide. And most of the time, depends again on the race, but you can meet with your crew or whoever's there to support you in the moment. And I was about 4 to 5 miles out from this aid station when I experienced a stomach pain. And naturally, you could imagine, just from a mental perspective, it was very hard to accept that in the moment because it forced me to walk, and that's the last thing I wanted to do. And then again, you just see all these people passing you, and it's so early in the race that I'm thinking to myself, there's no way I'm going to walk the next 75, 80 miles. This is like everything from the financial obligation to be here, from the race, purchasing the ticket to race this itself, because ultramarathons it cost a pretty penny for sure. Definitely not cheap.
Do you mind sharing how much?
I think it was $425 to do the 100-mile ultramarathon. Okay. But then again, it's the whole organization behind it. I asked a handful of my friends to see if they could devote their weekend to be there and support me and be part of my crew.
Yeah. So that entails basically sort of being in a car or in a van and like leapfrogging you essentially, or following along at some distance to be there with you.
Exactly.
And then checking in with you, supporting you, and then you kind of pass them at the aid station, essentially, I'm guessing, and then you're kind of like, all right, I'll see you in another like 10 miles kind of thing. Is that right?
Definitely. And at one point or kind of near the halfway point, you are, again, depends on the race, but you can have a pacer. So you're allowed to have one person, only one, run with you. And usually that's just from a safety perspective too, especially when it gets into the nighttime. I've heard countless podcasts and stories of people starting to hallucinate during ultramarathons and go off course, or they see something, the tree starting to have this face on it, and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to go over there. So pacers
are just getting delirious at this point, right?
Exactly.
You're exhausted. You're running. I mean, most people can't even run a mile, and anybody that's run long distance like that calls themselves a runner has maybe run a marathon. We're talking like 4 times that length, which requires immense mental and physical strength. So you had this stomach bug issue. You weren't even a quarter of the race in. And so you're thinking to yourself any number of different things. But to your point, like you have a pacer, sorry to interrupt you once again, and this is just for safety reasons because of how, difficult or dangerous really this could become running this long race, right?
Definitely. And at that early point in the race, I reacted to that stomach pain. It was just feelings of anger, annoyance, frustration, and just all the what ifs. All the what ifs start to flood your mind. All the feelings of doubt start to flood your mind. Like, I'm not going to finish this. Everything from the financial obligation to asking these group of people to devote their weekend for me. Just the whole training block devoted to this one race. Everything, I just felt this is all just going to go out the window. And it was in that moment where I just stopped. I stopped mid-race. I just took a step back, and I thought to myself, reminded myself, this is part of the journey. This is part of the race. If this didn't happen, what story could you make out of this? How are you going to act on this? Am I going to fight this the whole way through, or am I going to learn to figure it out and keep going? Because there was no part of me that was going to quit. I can tell you that. Quitting was not an option. So it was, I will either walk the next 80 miles of this race, hopefully finish it under the cutoff time, or I need to figure something out. And what ended up happening is I just walked. I just walked until the next aid station, which again was about 4 to 5 miles out. And I just vividly remember calling my mom, calling my girlfriend, and just being super pissed about the situation. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm seeing these, 50 plus year olds, because they participate in the race too. It's a whole age range just flying by me. And mentally, that's just hard to accept. It's hard to see people go past you. It's hard you want to run so bad, but you can't. You just physically can't. And given the stomach issue that I was dealing with, I also couldn't take anything down. And the whole point, or a big crucial factor in an ultramarathon, is to ensure that you are constantly fueling yourself, because that's the only way to keep going. You need calories that you can utilize to keep pushing and keep moving forward. And couldn't take anything down. Liquids, food, nothing was just sitting right. And so it was just very hard to accept that. Long story short, I just walked my way to the aid station, and I really needed the time just to sit back, sit down. I probably drank about 8 to 9 LaCroix, just sparkling water, because that's just what felt good in the moment. I don't know if it was helping or not, but I sat there for about 25, 30 minutes, just sat. And again, you're seeing all these people check in with their crew, get up, and they start going. And that is exactly what I needed to do. And it was very hard to accept, but that was a quick realization of, I can keep reacting at the situation in a negative manner, or I can respond the responsible way and the right way to this. And yeah, sure enough, after just sitting for about half an hour, getting up, that next split from aid station to aid station, I was just flying the whole way through. And I remember calling my mom midway through the race, just feelings of emotional excitement. I was like, I'm so grateful for everyone. I thank you everyone for just bearing with me. And yeah, ultramarathons really do entail an emotional roller coaster. I've come to understand that. There are moments where, you are thinking to yourself, why on earth did I sign up for this race right now? Like, this is the last thing I ever want to do. And then a couple minutes go by and you're like, I am just so grateful I have 2 legs that I'm able to do this. And I'm grateful for my family, my friends, everyone who came to support. So that was definitely one moment. And then second, I also vividly remember towards a little over the halfway point, I could not get my mind off crossing the finish line. I just kept thinking about the end to the suffering, the end to the pain I was experiencing. And
so at this point, again, sorry to cut you off.
No.
You were you made it through that first setback.
Yep.
Your stomach settled down a little bit. Did you ever kind of figure out what it was? Was it just like anxiety or like stress, or like did you eat something? Like did you have to use the bathroom? Like did you ever figure out what that was?
I did not. I think it was just an accumulation probably of just running that long in the moment. It was a hot day for sure. Yeah. It got up to about 90 degrees midday. So I don't know if it was just a mix of the heat and maybe the food I was eating or whatever it may have been. But the solution to that was really just settling down for a little. Just sit down.
So you pushed through that mental and physical. It sounded like more of a physical, but nonetheless, became a mental hurdle.
Right.
You just needed to like chill out for a minute. Okay.
Exactly.
So you just didn't allow it to completely destroy you and unravel you. You had the mindset to push through. You knew you just had to get to the aid station. You just chilled out for a little bit, and then you were able to push past that.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
So it was just a bit of a positive mindset, mentality, understanding you needed to take a couple steps back, literally and probably figuratively, to take some more steps forward.
Yeah.
So it had some patience, some, called your support group, some understanding. So these are all things that kind of helped you get through that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you made it through that first hurdle, and then continue where you were. You ran into another hurdle about halfway through the race.
A little over. Yeah. So about towards the 60-mile marker, the only thought in my head was the finish line and just being done with it. And I think most people, when they think of signing up for some people who think of signing up for a 100-mile race, they just want to see miles 90 through 100, but not 1 or 0 through 80, because the last part of a 100-mile race is the best part. You just finished one of the biggest accomplishments you've set out to do. But it is the entire process from miles 0 to 100 or 0 to 80 that really you start to learn the most about yourself. And so about a little over the halfway point, I could not get my mind off crossing the finish line. And there was definitely still a lot of distance to cover, but I just kept thinking the emotions I would feel, what I would do after I crossed the finish line, just the overall end of the suffering, because it was a lot of pain throughout that race. And again, it was just a moment in time where I thought to myself, why am I focused on a future outcome that hasn't even happened yet? I don't even know what's happening in my surroundings in this moment in time. I'm just focused on a future outcome. And what I've realized, honestly, from signing up for ultramarathons is that a lot of the lessons you learn in running can be applied to different facets of your life. And a lot of the lessons that I've come away with after completing ultras or marathons in general, all of those lessons can be applied to other parts of my life. This example in particular really reminded me of the importance of staying present, like just know where you are, think where your feet are in that moment. I was so fixated on just the finish line and the end of this, where I realized that is just a future outcome that has not happened yet. I need to focus where I am right here, right now. And whether that's take it aid station by aid station, mile by mile, it got to a point where it was focused step by step, like take it step by step. It was just a great reminder that it is important to stay present in life at all times. And you really need to hone in the power of now, the power of where you are right now, because if you're so fixated on the past or the future, you're missing out on the best parts in life. The best parts are what is happening right now. And it was just a great reminder in that moment in time of, just carrying me through the rest of the race. And again, after you think of something like that, you apply it to your own life. You got to make sure that you stay present. It's definitely just an important factor in everybody's lives that you can't overlook.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because again, I like how you apply these ideologies or mentalities from athletics to life, because there is so much carryover. And I do this with my personal training and my mental performance coaching clients as well. But that's a fantastic point. It sounds like you were able to get over that second major hurdle by realizing that you were engaging in future-based thinking, essentially. You were not enjoying the challenge that you were undergoing currently at the time. You were just wanting to finish the race. And so you were very outcome oriented in that moment. Like you just wanted it to be over with. And that's the kind of thing that happens with, I hear a lot of people, talk about this in their sort of everyday life, where it'll be like Monday or Tuesday during the week. And people are like, I just want it to be Friday. And I'm like, okay, well, what about the rest of the days in the week? You just want to skip past them. So many people are focused on the future and the past. What happened in the past? And regret or discontent or, sort of anxiety about things that happened in the past. And they're fixated on the future. What's going to happen in the future? What's not going to happen in the future? And so few people take the time to be in the present moment. And whether they're actively engaging in mindfulness, which is a technique that's literally designed to root you in the present moment. But even if you're not doing that, just taking the time, it sounds like you were able to kind of reel yourself back in and be like, well, wait a minute. I love this challenge and I signed up for this. This is what I signed up for. And yeah, I'm experiencing some discomfort right now, but I'm going to bring it back to the present moment, which not only probably helped you finish the race, but also was a good lesson that you learned about sort of life and about athletic pursuits, generally speaking. It's difficult, but like come back to the present moment and be with yourself in the present moment and enjoy that challenge. And it sounds like that really like helped you get through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And focusing on the present moment, that lesson right there learned. A lot of people associate their happiness with a future outcome. Like as soon as I get that promotion at work, I'll be happy. Or as soon as I make X amount of dollars, I'll be happy. Or as soon as I achieve whatever it may be, then I'll be happy.
As soon as I find that girl, as soon as I find that guy, as soon as I get married, as soon as I whatever, right?
Exactly.
So many people, instead of just being happy about where they are and what they have right now.
Exactly. And that's where the beauty lies for sure, is the present moment, enjoying the journey, because the end goal of anything is just a byproduct of the work you put in the journey. The consistency, the days you showed up when you didn't feel like it, the discipline that you embodied and put into your daily life and actions, again, choosing growth over comfort, it all ties back to that. It is, the end goal is just, people don't sign up for races, people don't shoot for big goals or achievements just for the end goal. It's the whole beauty, the whole process, the whole story building is embedded in that journey, not just the end goal. So.
All right, so let's pivot just a little bit to go from talking about actual in-competition performance to recovery. Because with any athletic pursuit, and no doubt with endurance athletic pursuits, there has to be a big focus on recovery, whether it's after an event or training. So talk to me a little bit about what your approach to recovery is, both mentally and physically, after a long race or after an intense training session.
Yeah, definitely. So I have my own little recovery ritual, if you will. After any big race or small race, half marathon to 100-mile ultramarathon, first and foremost is just take care of the necessities, which is sleep is probably the biggest recovery tool that you can possibly utilize and benefit from. Proper hydration immediately after, proper nutrition as well. Do I indulge in, a little cheat day meal after some big race? Absolutely, no doubt about it. But just make sure the days following that, or even the day of later on, you get back to fueling your body with nutrient-dense whole foods if you can, just what it needs in that moment. And then aside from that, I have some recovery tools that I utilize on a daily basis. So massage gun, foam roller. I even have compression boots, which have been game-changing. And honestly, it's like a lazy form of recovery, but I love those things and I use them on a nightly basis. And then from a mental perspective, I really love to journal after a race. I love to replay the moment in my head, but write it down on paper, because I think it's important after any race you do to celebrate that win and that achievement. Again, going just to avoid burnout, you need to have pride in yourself. You need to celebrate the small wins, the big wins, the daily, it could even be a daily win. If you just stack wins on top of each other, no matter how big or small, that builds momentum. But from a recovery standpoint, it has become crucial to really just take care of hydration, fueling your body with what it needs, the demands you're putting it through. You really need to take care of it as much as, you want to be on go, go, go mode. You just need to learn how it responds to certain stressors that you put on it. And yeah, mentally as well, I think, after you complete a big race or whatever it may be, it would overwhelm you and feel like burnout if you just had your eyes set on another race right away. So I think just reliving that moment of whatever just happened and you achieved is very important. And then just give yourself a little break, just enjoy life for a little if that's what makes you feel good. Or if you really do have the foot on the gas pedal and go is how you enjoy or how you thrive when in the races, then that may be it for you. But I think it's very individual based on that front. But yeah, just taking care of proper recovery needs, fuel, hydration, massage gun, foam roll, whatever it may be. I also do a deep tissue massage once a month. It's always one of the most painful activities I pay for and sign myself up for, but I know my body needs it. I see a chiropractor weekly as well, which I've come to really benefit from as well. So, yeah.
Sounds like you have a pretty well-rounded approach to recovery then. How did you learn what you needed exactly? Was this like part of your research process, or do you have like a mentor that's like an endurance athlete? Like, talk to me about because it's one thing to say those are great recovery tools that you all just listed there, but how did you know what you need?
Yeah, a little bit through research on my own. And then honestly, just through trial and error as well. I think at the beginning stages, especially with running, I would run into a lot of small injuries. I dealt with Achilles tendonitis at one point, or a hamstring flare-up, or whatever it may have been. And that was just a clear sign that you need to pull back a little and you need to really prioritize recovery, because, it's so easy just to get caught up in, I'm going to push my body to the max every day, or I'm just going to keep pushing it. And yeah, I'll just sleep and I'll get 6.5 hours. Oh, I got 6. It's okay. And your body's going to tell you, you got to focus on recovery. And I think other signs too, or early warning signs that I really pay attention to now, again, just through trial and error, is fatigue, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, irritability. If you start to notice yourself becoming a little bit more irritable at certain events or people or whatever it may be, irregular sleep patterns, lack of focus, even just from a hormone perspective, like lack of energy, lack of libido, whatever it may be, I really pay attention, and I have come to understand that if I see any of those early warning signs, that may be sign to take a deload, or maybe there's other external stressors in your life, like family, relationships, work, and it's very smart of one to understand I'm having a tough time at work right now, but I have a big workout to do the same day. I need to take a step back, look at my life from a macro point of view. What areas need more attention? What areas need more care applied towards them? And yeah, really just take it day by day from there. Okay.
I'm wondering, you've been pursuing endurance sports for at least a few years now, certainly since COVID, you mentioned. How has your perspective on mental health, mental performance, and resilience evolved throughout your journey, especially in relation to endurance sports?
Yeah, I would say, in really focusing on resilience, again, I think it goes back to choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. And a lot of that process, it becomes very habitual, where if you are consciously choosing the decision that you need to choose versus letting emotion take over, then that will become a habit. And whichever route you go down and give more attention to, or make that decision, whether that's, are you going to give in to the lack of motivation today, or I'm just not feeling it, or I'm a little tired, or whatever it may be, day after day, that's just going to rule your life. And over time, I think I've really embodied discipline in my life. It's almost a daily thing where I don't want to do a lot of things. I don't want to go for the run. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to stretch. It's painful sometimes. I don't want to do any of this. But what am I going to look back on 20 years from now, or even at the end of the day, that how much better did it feel that you skipped that run today? You avoided the pain, or it was cold outside. Now you're dry in your own home and warm, or whatever it may be. versus, no, I really learned a lot about myself from choosing the decision I knew I needed to do, but didn't want to do emotionally. And that really reflects in the linear progression of the races I signed up for. It started in the year of 2023. It started with signing up for a half marathon, which at the time, 13.1 miles seemed impossible. Like, it truly felt impossible to run a half marathon. My longest training run was 11 miles in that build. And I was like, I don't even know how this is going to happen. And I had a time goal too, which was pretty ambitious of me in the moment. You do the half marathon, it becomes achievable. It's a reality. It's in the past now. What else can I do? And so in 2023, it was a half marathon to a marathon, first marathon ever, which got me to qualify for Boston. Which is a pretty big accomplishment, by the way. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. But certainly, there's a qualifying process for the Boston Marathon. So to go from doing your first half marathon, which felt unachievable at the time, so this has been a quick turnaround for you, to doing in the same year you did your first marathon and also qualified for one of the most, if not the most, quintessential marathons. That's like a mecca for marathon runners, right?
Right.
So this has been a fast process for you.
Definitely.
To immediately qualify for the Boston Marathon, your first marathon that you raced.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and by no means am I gifted or talented in the running space. There was a lot of hidden work that went behind that. A lot of sacrifices, a lot of saying no to my friends, whatever plans they were doing, a lot of staying inside on a Friday, Saturday night, a lot of early wake-ups. So, that journey, it wasn't just, I'll take a shot at this marathon and boom, qualify for Boston. It was a lot of hidden work and sacrifices within that journey. But in 2023, just from going from a half marathon to the marathon, at the end of that year, I signed up for a 100-kilometer ultramarathon in Big Bear, California.
So that's different than the 100-mile race. Mm-hmm. So this was 100 kilometers, which is what, 60 miles?
62, yeah.
Okay, so you went from a half marathon to a full marathon to a 100-kilometer race, all within one calendar year?
Correct.
Okay.
Because, again, it was just a burning sensation and desire within me. What more am I capable of?
Okay.
And so at the start of 2024 was time to train for Boston. So that was the first race of that year, which I ended up, my first marathon I ran in 2 hours and 48 minutes. And at Boston, I ran 2 hours and 45 minutes. So,
which is a pace of what exactly?
About 6 minutes, 14 seconds, minute per mile pace.
For a 2:45?
2:45.
It's like a 6:14.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's the current goal?
Current goal is sub 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Okay, so that would be like a 6 minute?
6:05.
6:05 pace.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
yeah, so 2024 was Boston Marathon to the 100-mile ultramarathon.
Okay.
And then, I try to find a personal record in whatever I can. So then I went back to the half marathon space, but the first half marathon I ever did at the beginning of 2023 was completed in an hour and 23 minutes. And so the goal for the most recent one I just did was under an hour and 20 minutes. And I ended up running that in an hour and 17 minutes, which is about a 5:53 minute per mile pace.
Okay.
So just carrying that momentum going into this Boston prep. And yeah, there's a quote I heard on a podcast one time from Alex Hormozy, if you've heard of him.
Very familiar with him.
Yep. And he said, you don't gain confidence by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by having an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. And I think throughout all these marathons and races I've signed up for and trained for, again, it's a lot of the hidden work that goes into these preps and all the sacrifices that are made of going into these preps. I've been eating the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the last 3 years. I just haven't changed it up. I like what I eat and I stay consistent with it, but it's just these certain factors and variables in your life that a lot of people don't see. But that for me is what allows me to show I've accomplished these goals of mine because of just the consistency of it. Consistency kills fear. Consistency kills doubt. It kills uncertainty. But what I've come to realize is consistency breeds confidence. And with going into these races, I now have a undeniable stack of proof that I want to be. This is only the beginning. I just want to continue evolving my endurance career and pursuing bigger and better goals. And so over time, just the mental resilience with that is that it just becomes, I don't know if it becomes easier per se, but I become more accustomed to, it's not what I want to do, but I know I need to do this.
On a day-to-day basis.
Day-to-day basis.
Like, obviously, you want to be an endurance athlete and you want to pursue these things. But when you get down to, like, the minutia, the day-to-day grind, so to speak, that doesn't always feel good and often, perhaps rarely feels good. Getting up early or going for those runs or the consistency with the weight training or whatever. So it sounds like your confidence has been built through stacking up an undeniable list of accomplishments, which you are young in your career, athletic career right now. So I have no doubt that will continue to grow. But then that also helps build your resilience.
Exactly.
Because when you have this undeniable stack of accomplishments, it helps you to be more resilient because you have undeniable proof that you can accomplish difficult things, whether it's what you're currently pursuing, because I have no doubt that there will probably be some new event in your future that you have yet to sign up for that maybe isn't even on the horizon yet for you. But because you have accomplished so many things that you knew were difficult to accomplish in the past, now you know when you sign up or pursue difficult things currently, you know that you're capable of achieving difficult things because you did all those other things.
Exactly.
So it sounds like over time you've kind of built up that confidence and resilience through stacking up all those things that you knew were difficult.
Right. And I want to say maybe this comes from David Goggins or just the analogy he uses, but a cookie jar. And, when you're faced with adversity in life or you're facing a hard moment in time, you have this cookie jar that you can reach into and pull out, a time in your past where you were in a similar situation or feeling similar feelings in this situation. It was faced with adversity. It was hard. It was a tough moment to overcome, but you overcame it. You pushed through. And I use that analogy a lot go in training and in preps or whatever it may be, even a race itself of, I know that I've done X, Y, and Z in the past, and it just reinforces the idea of I believe in myself. I know I can do this right now, even though I'm having certain feelings of doubt or uncertainty. Look at the track record that I've had, and it's individual for everybody, and it doesn't even apply to fitness itself. It can be applied to all facets of life, but everybody has a cookie jar that they can always pull something out just to remind themselves and give them that boost, like, I got this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you said that because you reminded me of a quote that I think for myself and for a lot of my clients. And it's not the same exact thing. I like the analogy of the cookie jar for sure. But what I tell people is that if they're having a bad day, for example, and this could be applied to athletic pursuits as well, if you're having a bad race or something like that, is that your track record of making it through bad days is 100%. So, and that's always going to be true. And that's a kind of a mindfulness perspective type technique where it's like, if you're having a bad day, like you're going to make it through the day. Like your track record, by virtue of the fact that you are still alive, means that every single bad day that you've had previously in your life, you've made it through.
Yeah.
And then another quote that I like, I don't know who the I don't know where the origin of this one is, but it has to do with, I think it's golf. I think it's a golf quote, but it's like a bad day on the golf course is better than like a good day in the office or something like that.
I like that.
One of those where it's like, even if you're having an awful race, so that 100-mile race that you were talking about earlier, you still have the opportunity. You're still in the midst of doing something that you enjoy and that you love. Yeah, does it suck in the moment that your stomach feels like it's got a knife twisted through it? Yeah, but like you still are, you still have your body's able to do that. You're still fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be in that situation. So I think a lot of it is just really perspective.
Definitely. I completely agree. I think the things you look at start to change when you change the way you look at things.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Yeah, and I think it's powerful. Perspective really is everything. Even from small things you can do on a day-to-day basis of changing, I have to go to the grocery store. I have to go to the gym. I have to walk the dog. I get to walk the dog. I
100%.
Get to go to the grocery store. Because it's an opportunity. We have to remind ourselves of things that we're grateful for. And gratitude serves it has a very positive impact for everybody when you just take a second to step back and think, last time I checked, I still have food in the fridge. I still have water to drink. I have a roof over my head. Because it can boil down to little things like that just to make you think, I'm grateful.
For sure, because not everybody has those things.
Definitely.
I like to sort of refer to those things as like first world problems when I'm complaining that my Bluetooth on my phone isn't connecting to the speaker. It's like, all right, well, if that's the worst thing that you have to complain about today, like you're probably going to have a pretty good day.
Yeah.
You could not have food. You could not have shelter. You could not have safety. You could not have friends or a job or family or these sorts of things. So it puts things into perspective.
Absolutely.
So when we're talking about perspective, I want to talk about the next generation, because you were once somebody that was looking at social media and going through a transformative period in your life, like figuring out what you wanted to do. There's somebody right now that was in your shoes, 4 years ago or whatever it was at the beginning of COVID. So the question is, what advice would you give to younger athletes or those starting out in the endurance space, particularly regarding mental toughness, motivation, discipline, perspective, etc.? So what advice would you give to the younger generation about the mental aspects?
Yeah. First is to love the process, love the journey. And I lose sight of that myself sometimes. Again, all the beauty lies in the journey and in the process of, again, any facet of life, whether that's fitness or just personal relationships. But the journey is where you learn the most about yourself. The journey is where you find yourself dealing with setbacks or failures, and how are you going to navigate that? Are you going to respond or are you going to react? And then also just start, just take that first step. I think a lot of people spend more time trying to figure out and think whatever it is they want to accomplish than the actual time it would take to do it. And a lot of the times we always overthink and overplan and just map everything out. Has to be perfect or has to be this way. And when in reality, you learn the most about just starting, just taking the first step. And I would say also just don't get caught up in overwhelming yourself, and because then you can really easily lead to burnout. So it really just comes down to step by step and enjoying every step along the journey.
So learn to love the process. Sort of the one way that I like to think about that, because I'm very much the same way, is that a way that I like to think about that is that the destination is the journey.
Definitely.
Which might sound a little bit like counterintuitive, but what I'm trying to say by that is, like, a lot of people are very fixated on the end goal, like winning or crossing the finish line. For example, if I want to take it back to the example that you gave from earlier about the 100-mile race, the destination, you will experience the most fulfillment and the most growth if you learn that the destination is the journey itself. Don't necessarily worry about what's going to happen in the future, because in a lot of cases, you don't really have control over that anyways, which also ties back into the controllables. But if you learn to make the destination the process itself, you will be significantly happier and also experience a lot more growth.
Definitely.
So that's a big one. And as far as, the next generation, right, is it one of those things that you just said? Like, what mindset or mental skill do you think is the most important? If you had to pick one thing, what mindset or mental skill set is most important for athletes in order to succeed in sports and in even life beyond athletics? Is there one thing that kind of rises above anything we've talked today to succeed in sports and life beyond athletics?
Yeah, I would really stress perspective. And I think, with everything in terms of discomfort and pain, are you going to look at that and try to fight it and work against it? Or are you going to learn to work with it and understand that discomfort and going through moments of being uncomfortable in general is growth? Like, that is where you're growing. Because if you just feel comfortable and nice and easy your whole life, you will be complacent. You will not find what you were capable of, what you were meant to set out to do. So I think perspective, and again, like we said, you can just change the way you look at everything on a daily basis. And that has a very powerful impact because nobody sees anything the same. Everybody has their own opinion. Everybody has their own perspective on whatever it may be. You could have a group of people watching the same movie all next to each other, 10 people. Everybody's going to have a different perspective of that, certain scenes in the movie, whatever it may be. So if you can manage your perspective and manage how you react and how you respond, not react, that can go a long way. And I think the other one I actually want to stress on is expectations. A lot of people create expectations in their head, and I'm guilty of that. I've done that countless times. And when things don't go to plan, you react. It wasn't what you had in mind. It wasn't the exact layout it was going to be. And if you're just so fixated on having certain expectations and they aren't met, it will be detrimental to your overall mental health. So if you can learn to develop an open mind and just adapt as needed, life is going to throw curveballs your way. Life isn't always going to go to plan. But if you manage, I didn't have expectations in this. I'm staying open. I'm adapting. I'm taking it step by step. It's powerful.
Yeah, that's definitely something that is significantly easier said than done. Great point. And I want to stress that, Quinn, you are very well developed in a lot of these mental skills. And it sounds like you've done a lot of research and read a lot of books and probably watched some YouTube. And you're following people like Alex Hormozy and David Goggins and probably a few others as far as athletes or people that have accomplished significant things in their life and kind of pay it forward. But for our listeners, I want to stress that these are not things that will happen overnight. Just as somebody does not go from a non-runner to somebody that completes a 100-mile race, there is a period of development and progression that needs to happen with the mental side of things, just as there is with the physical side of things. And I don't say that to demoralize or deter anyone. I say that because it's important to start learning about these things, and it's important to start implementing them into your training regimen and into your mindset now, because it can take a significant amount of time before you will sort of realize the returns on those things. Just like somebody starts running, it's going to take a while before you are an accomplished enough runner to even run a 5K and then a 10K and then a half and then a full and these sorts of things. So mental performance and training your brain is just like any other skill or pursuit. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes dedication. So you will, I have no doubt, continue to practice those things. And for our listeners, I encourage you to take these skills, some of which you may already have, and start building on them, because that's how you're going to flex them into something that's like significant and powerful in your life.
Absolutely. And I think that comes with consistency as well. It's just going down the right path or the right direction that you personally want to, which is unique for everybody, but stay consistent with it, because that you might not see in a success or whatever positive impact it might be overnight, and you just take a step back and look at it from a macro view, like the greatness of certain athletes in our world, like NBA, Kobe and Michael Jordan and LeBron, that they didn't just wake up one day and become a basketball superstar. Like, it is the entire journey of what they went through that builds their story and what makes them so great. And just going off of that, one more thing is, I'm a firm believer in that everybody can turn the page in their life and write their own story at any point. And let's just say your entire life is composed of this empty book. And if you look in the pages previously, that's what's happened in your life yesterday, last month, last year, 10 years ago. But when you wake up every morning, you have a blank page that has nothing written on it, and the pen is in your hand, and you have the power and the ability to write, what am I going to do today? How am I going to write and tell this story years down the road, that this right here was the turning point, or this is when I made the conscious choice of growth over discomfort, or growth over comfort, or whatever it may be. So,
for sure, I like to say that consistency is a superpower.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if it's because our phones are listening to us or whatever, but that's a mantra that I live by. But I see a lot of that stuff on my social media feed. But consistency, to your point about writing your new story, it doesn't matter what has happened in the past. Like, the past is in the past. We can't control it anymore. The best that we can hope to do is learn lessons from it. But you are absolutely in control of writing your story, or sort of rewriting your story. Every day is a blank page. So wake up, choose growth over comfort, I think basically is the message that we're trying to convey here.
Yeah. And, who you are becoming is more important than who you've become.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to a quote, to a book of inspirational quotes from you in the future, for sure. Okay. Well, we're kind of close to the end of wrapping up here. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you would like to cover or discuss that we haven't necessarily gone over already, related to mental performance or athletic performance in general.
Yeah. Last thing I would leave off for our listeners is, you don't have to be a champion or an all-star to start acting like one. If you were the champion of whatever discipline it is that you're doing, would you eat differently? Would you sleep differently? Would you train differently? Would you act differently? And I think a lot of people, again, kind of like this end goal thing is, once I get to that point, I'll achieve happiness, or I'll act different, or whatever it may be. Everybody's a champion in their own world. Everybody is a superstar in their own world. It's just a main character moment in everybody's lives walking around. And I think it's important just to know you are a champion inside. You are the best version of yourself right now. And there is so much more room for growth, and there's so much more implementations you can start to incorporate in your life that make you really stand out and make yourself believe who you are deep down. Because again, belief comes before ability. So I think that people don't have to wait for an end goal or an achievement or any kind of external factor in their life to start change if they want that. I think you can pick up the pen again and just start writing in that blank page and completely change the trajectory of your life if you're in a rough spot. And if you're in a great spot, keep building off that momentum. Keep implementing consistency in your life across all facets of your own life, and just watch it all unfold, because that's where it becomes a beautiful, beautiful journey to live by.
Yeah, I second that. And I really like what you said about how you don't have to be a champion to act like one. Because let's say that you want to be an endurance athlete, you want to be an ultramarathon runner, and you do all your research and you figure out how they train, and you figure out, what their sleep schedule is, how they're fueling their body with their nutrition, how much they're hydrating, how they're recovering, all of these sorts of things. Even though you are not currently an ultra-marathon runner, not you specifically. I'm just sort of speaking to the collective you, anybody that wants to accomplish anything. There's no reason that starting today, starting right now, hypothetically, that you cannot adopt those same habits and lifestyles that the person you want to become. In fact, that is how you become that person, is you adopt those lifestyles and you adopt those habits. So this is true across all facets of life. If you want to become a successful entrepreneur or a successful public speaker or anything, really, all you have to do is do a little bit of research and figure out, also I like to say you become like the people you surround yourself with. So for example, if you find yourself surrounded by a group of friends that are a little bit toxic, or you're in a relationship that's not really serving your purpose anymore, and you want to do something different with your life, go find some new friends. There's nothing tying you down to that person or those friends that you're with. So become like the people that you want to become, and start adopting those habits right now, and you will realize that potential. The only thing limiting you is yourself.
Definitely. Couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. I think, again, it is just the self-imposed limitations that we put on ourselves, and it all ties back to just perspective. It ties back to how you view yourself. And, that saying, you don't have to be a champion to start acting like one, that's just a label that a lot of people put on themselves, like, once I get there, or I'm just not that person. I'm not LeBron James, or I'm not Michael, because that's not who I am. But I don't have to have that label of being a champion or whatever it may be to start acting like that and just implement those daily changes throughout my life, because that is what's going to get you there, just like you were saying. And there's no better time to start than now.
For sure. That's an idea that I like to refer to as a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you've never heard that before.
Definitely.
Which the idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy is that if I believe that I will become the best athlete, or if I believe that I will become a successful entrepreneur or public speaker, or if I believe that I will become a millionaire one day, I will. Your brain, the neuroplasticity of your brain, the way that things happen when you journal, when you make to-do lists for yourself, when you set goals for yourself, when you paint this picture of a future version of yourself, the body has a way of acting in ways that will help you arrive at that goal. And therefore, you prove yourself correct. You prove yourself right. If you believe that you are a loser, or that you're not good enough, or that you will never be a millionaire, or that you can't run an ultramarathon, in the same way that your body acted in a way that got you to where you wanted to go, if you believe negative things, your body and your brain will act in a way that will not get you there. And you will therefore also prove yourself correct again. So the saying goes, whether you think you're right or wrong, you're correct.
Yeah. I love that one.
Yeah.
So that.
You believe that you can achieve something, you're right. If you believe that you can't achieve something, you're also right.
Yep.
So the decision is really up to you. And a lot of that comes down to self-reflection, perspective, consistency, controlling the controllables, really all of these things that we've talked about today. The decision is yours. Write that book.
Definitely. Absolutely. All ties back to belief comes before ability. You have to believe in yourself first before anyone else will. And sometimes you can be a little delusional with that. Like if it's such a crazier outward goal that just seems so crazy to the general public or anybody else's opinions, you sometimes have to be a little bit delusional and think, yeah, this is running 100 miles is the last thing I thought I would ever do, but I know I can do it. And I believe in myself that I can do it, because when you face adversity at any point in your life and when moments get tough, you have to remember, I believe in myself. And it's just a you versus you always.
Well, Quinn, this has been very inspirational and informative. I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your, no doubt, busy schedule to come here and share your thoughts and your experiences with us on the podcast. Any closing thoughts before we part ways today?
I'm very grateful for you giving me the opportunity to be here. New experience, first podcast I'm on. hope to be back eventually. And I'm just endlessly grateful for you for giving me the opportunity to be here, and our conversation today. Greatly value it.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Like I've said countless times throughout the podcast today, I'm really looking forward to great things from you in the future. Perhaps we will have another episode again in the future, outlining, detailing whatever you've got going on in your life. But again, it was a pleasure to have you here. I wish you the best of luck, and good luck with Boston this year. I know that you're going to beat your PR because you've just been smashing one record after another. So good luck to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Justin. Likewise.
All right, Quinn. Thanks again.